Brother Chuck, I have a question. You are re-elected to city councilor. And this time around, what's your plan? Briefly tell us what you'll do different to bring the community together.
In April, when I was deciding whether I would run or not, I decided that I'd just run for 2 more terms as District 7 City Councilor. And let me answer this first because it's an important issue, I think. And I made that decision because thought young people there were a number of young people who were kind of grooming themselves to run, that were running at large now, and that the city council, district city council seats are really the beginning run of political activity. So it seemed to me to be appropriate to just make it clear at what point that I would be leaving so people could then begin to think. Some of the candidates who were younger and who were running for office could understand when they wouldn't have my opposition, and that could help them think about how they wanted to move forward. It's interesting because I spent my life organizing people to work together to confront the system in terms of how it needs to behave. Some of that organizing was confronting of ourselves to organize ourselves to move forward, but generally we're really looking at what the system needed to do in terms of demand. In a situation where violence is still high, not only among youth, but among adults, domestic violence keeps going on. It doesn't get the attention that homicides and murders in the streets do, but I think a lot of the domestic violence leads to young people committing homicides because they see violence being used in their homes and they grow up with that. Then it's hard not to have the thought in the back of your mind that when I get mad at somebody, then I have a right to be violent. But when you're 14, 15, 16, 17, you don't think about the fact that the way you're going to use to be violent is going to kill somebody. So I think we as adults have to take responsibility for violence that a lot of the violence that we see among young people. We have the capability in District 7 to make a choice that we have under our control to make not only our life, but the lives of everybody around us better. It's simple. Think about the fact that if tomorrow people throughout District 7 said, I'm not going to be abusive to anyone. I'm not going to shout at them. I'm not going to call them out of their names. I'm not going to raise my hand at them. I'm not going to get into pointless arguments around money that's just trying to, assert my power. If the adults, not even talking about the young people, but the adults of our community said, the violence has been used to bring us from Africa. They couldn't have got us here from Africa if it hadn't been for the violence. They couldn't have raped our women if it hadn't been for the violence. They couldn't have lynched us if it hadn't been for the violence. That when we think about it, all the things we feel so bad about in terms of the last 400 years were perpetrated through violence. And now look at it. I'm not sure how we get there. I'm not sure whether we can get there. But I think it's time for a politician. The ministers say it, but people in the churches, some of them adopted. Some of the ministers are, are doing domestic violence. I just say that because I deal with people who deal with domestic violence, and the reality is that, hypocrites come in every form, in every shape, and so while they talk about violence in the church, it usually stays in there in terms of that issue of personal responsibility. If we could really start a movement where we make a pledge to ourselves and each other to pull back from violence, if we could start a movement where we really become serious about not being violent, the quality of our lives immediately goes up. Because think about the month in this year that made you feel worse, and think about how much of that had to do with arguments and struggles and fights, not with your job, not with some bureaucrat, but with your mother or father or boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife. I would suggest that the energy that takes the energy around us is wrapped up with the question of how do we deal with the disputes in the community. I think, we've got the problem we have is that this country is falling apart. It has to fall apart. It's been built on the blood of black people, on the blood of women, workers. There's no way that this country can keep going the way it is now. It's got, Barack has brought it back a little bit, but it's just a moment in time that's going to fall apart. And so the question meaning that the structures that are there aren't going to continue to be able to go on. And so the question we have to raise is, how do we begin to rebuild an economy, a community that works for us? And see, I think we're going to have to do it. I think we have the capacity to do it, because just like I had the beliefs in Phil when he came in, we don't appreciate how much talent and ability we have. I hire people who come out of prison because I know that the fact they've gone to prison doesn't mean they don't have a soul, doesn't mean that they don't have creative energy. It'd be a fool to say that just because somebody made a mistake and went to prison, or didn't make a mistake and went to prison, that they don't have any talent, because talent is what we have as human beings. And so I really do believe in us. But the problem is that as long as our mind is filled with fighting and anger and revenge, all that positive energy gets shoved down. It doesn't come out. And so what I really want to try to do during these last 4 years is to really begin to get us to think about not just people in the church, but people who don't believe in church, who don't go to church, and say, I don't care whether you go to church or not. This isn't about whether you're in church. It's about whether you believe in peace, right? Whether you believe in peace, whether you think your life could be better and the lives of everybody around you could be better if we dealt with each other in peace. And see, if you believe that, then your first responsibility, right, is to be that. To be the peace. We have to spend time dealing with relationships.
Amen.
Yes. Dealing with relationships. If we can begin to try to show each of us that we love each other, that we care for each other. That's the reason I have a district office. I'm saying if I'm a politician, then how do I demonstrate that I'm interested in more than just going downtown and having a well-paying job and being able to go to fancy parties? I said, well, I can put an office in the community where people can come and they don't have to go downtown.
That's right.
And what does that say to them? That says to them that he cares. But the next thing is, how do I get the people who come in to get the services from somebody who cares to then go out and behave to their neighbors in a way that shows that they care? Because if we get people beginning to say to each other and show each other that we care about each other, then I think we have a foundation. Right now we don't have a foundation because we don't have a commitment to love each other. That is, we don't have a commitment in our minds and our hearts to constantly try to give support and love to each other, even when we don't feel like it. Once we put our political organizing together with a commitment to be respectful to each other and caring to each other, then our kids will see that. Our kids will see that. It'll be easier to have conversations with kids about their negative behavior if they see us ending our negative behavior, because they know who we are beyond the rhetoric, right? And if they see us telling them one thing, but they know we're doing the same thing that they're doing, then they're going to say, the hell with them. So I think we're on the brink of a great change. Because it has to happen. This country's going down, brothers and sisters, and it should go down given the way people have been treated. The question is whether we are ready to build for the future. And I think we should be. And so I think we just need to talk about it more and learn how to love each other.